Looking back over the 20th century, it can be seen that art movements had clearly defined demarcation points. Whether it was ragtime and cubism in the 1910s, rock and roll and brutalism in the 1950s, punk rock, disco, pop art and the gritty films in the 1970s, or grunge and EDM music and the baggy pants, fitness wear, and supermodel fashion age in the 1990s, it's impossible to deny how styles exploded and became definitive of the decades during which they were born. But have you ever thought about the great artistic movements which defined the 2000s? How about the 2010s? While the business side of art has evolved tremendously, the past 2 decades has spurred no definitive stylistic movements in music, fashion, film, or any other creative medium. It's almost as if everything has become a replica of what has come before. A key difference between the decades before and after the year 2000 was how art and entertainment is consumed. Prior to Y2K, people had no choice but to actively seek out art, especially music and film. To listen to one's favorite songs, one would go to the store and buy a physical album or go to a concert to hear it played live. To watch a film, one would go to a theater for the experience or a video store in hopes your favorite new release was available. But when internet access exploded in the 1990s, a direct line for art to be consumed with little effort was formed. And as an overwhelming amount of on-demand content has become instantly accessible to the public, the ability for artistic styles to grow and capture the public has evaporated. Is it possible the birth of on-demand has effectively marked the death of art movements? And is it possible the never-ending deluge of content that comes with it will prevent any style from becoming a prevalent, let alone definitive sign of its time ever again? While the internet's origins run back to the 1960s, it was in the 1990s with the creation of the World Wide Web that usage of data networks by the general public became feasible. The introduction of digital communication through email, internet forums, and direct messaging resulted in adoption of the web by the United States public growing over 100% per year throughout the 90s. It was clearly evident early on that the web had great commercial potential. However, its impact on art can arguably be traced to a single technological innovation finalized in 1992 when Suzanne Vega's song Tom's Diner was the first to be successfully compressed into the lossless audio format known as the MP3. This file format allowed the audio sampling rate that produces CD quality sound to be downsized by over 75% while essentially sounding the same to your average listener. The MP3 initially proved useful mainly to multimedia companies and people wanting to store large music collections on personal computers. However, its true potential wasn't realized until 1999 when programmers Sean Parker and Sean Fanning released the peer-to-peer file sharing platform Napster, which allowed people to share entire MP3 libraries en masse for free to anyone on the internet. While artists such as Metallica and Dr. Dre and record companies like A&M were successful in suing Napster into oblivion, the cat was out of the bag. The age of physical media had been dealt a death blow. And after peaking in sales of over 950 million units in the year 2000, physical album sales have plummeted to the point where in the year 2021, only 34 million compact discs were sold in the United States. While this development may seem tragic solely to the commercialism of music, sadly, there was a victim on the creative front as well: the full-length album. As revenue in the music industry shifted to digital sales and streaming services, the general public's desire for artists to release full-length albums has also all but disappeared. The combined total of physical and digital album sales has dropped steadily from 500 million units in 2007 to 100 million in the year 2022. Because of this shift, artists are increasingly abandoning the production of full-length albums to focus on releasing singles in rapid succession. And as more and more people adopt streaming services centered around shuffled songs and pre-selected playlists, the ability for any one or group of artists to capture the attention and define a generation with a cohesive sound has vanished. While file sharing didn't bring quite the same plague down upon the world of film that Napster did to music, The advent of subscription-based video-on-demand services such as Netflix and Amazon Prime has supercharged the shift in public consumption of film away from the multiplex and to the home theater. Having instant access to a library of classic and new films and TV shows, audiences are increasingly eschewing the cost and time and money associated with going out to the movies in favor of watching from the comfort of their own home. In the 1980s, film studios delayed VHS home releases of their films by 6 months following a theatrical run. Then, in the 90s, as the home theater market exploded and the DVD was introduced, studios further reduced the delay to 90 days. But as streaming video became a viable medium, they realized that reducing the gap even further held bigger reward than risk. Marketing a quick-to-follow home release during promotions for the theatrical run simplified the process and amplified the effectiveness of ad campaigns. And when COVID-19 forced studios to forego theatrical runs altogether and immediately release tentpole films for digital rental and purchase, the commercial viability of on-demand proved too lucrative to ignore. It is now commonplace for major releases to be available online within 17 days of an initial theatrical release. While big-budget films move online, the plummeting cost of cameras, audio recording devices, and film editing suites has empowered independent studios to produce mountains of content that both free and paid streaming services are more than happy to snatch up. With the astronomical glut of content now available, the ability for any film to define a summer or year, let alone a decade, is over. Films that would have shattered box offices in the 80s and 90s are now largely forgotten by the time the initial ad campaign has ended. Though one might argue on-demand has been a boom for episodic series such as Game of Thrones and Stranger Things, in recent years, even series that captured the public's eye, such as Netflix's Wednesday, are becoming yesterday's news just as quickly as their blockbuster film cousins. Whether it is the OA, Glow, or Gossip Girl, countless series have been launched to fanfare only to fade into obscurity and cancellation after a mere 2 or 3 seasons, the minimum needed to ensure studios can rely on future revenue from the occasional new audience. In conjunction with social media such as TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube releasing more content each and every day than the major players of yesterday released each year, it is now impossible for artistic movements to be created, let alone garner the attention needed to influence a generation. The moment a song, video, or film gains enough visibility to capture the public's attention, the next great thing is already sneaking up from behind to take the spotlight. It may be disheartening to see on-demand art and entertainment bringing about the end of decades defined by styles of their time. But there is a silver lining in all of this. In centuries past, music, theater, and visual arts were controlled by the wealthy and powerful, such as governments and the church. But the same factors driving the shift to on-demand entertainment are making art far easier to produce by the average creator, and democratizing the world of art more and more each day. Over the past 2 decades, the proliferation of technologies for recording music, producing films, and creating illustrations, and the mass production and distribution of the materials needed for painting, sculpting, and fashion has quickly leveled the playing field between the elites and everyday artists. Times of great change do not come without great upheaval. And if there's anything the state of the world today demonstrates, it is that we as a species are experiencing growing pains more excruciating than ever before. But looking back over centuries past, every period of great turmoil has been followed by an age of enlightenment, maturation, and discovery. It is very likely the state of art and entertainment today is merely transitory, and that we will find ourselves in a new renaissance on the other side. The advancements brought by technological innovation and the ease by which our diverse cultures are spreading across the globe and being embraced by people everywhere will spur new perspectives and inspire works unlike anything that came before. What is important to remember is that our creative efforts never need to be a reflection of what other artists are creating. Innovation is found only when we embrace the freedom of not having to pigeonhole ourselves in the pursuit of conforming to what is hip today. on-demand may very well be burning down the process by which art was formed and embraced in years past. But from its embers, like a phoenix, the concepts of art and creative freedom themselves may yet be reborn with a fiery brilliance, the likes of which we could never have imagined.